Okay, I'd like to call to order the Human Resource Committee meeting. We have all in attendance. I need approval of the agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I saw no public comments, none. Nobody? All right, let's go to the first agenda item, Brian.
So our first agenda item, or action, seeking an action on this would be the wage increases for our hourly staff. As we've kind of reviewed at other committee meetings, we were hoping that at this point we would have more state budget clarity, which would permit us to take, I guess, known action. Know what we have for resources available to us. But that hasn't come to be available yet. But we are still proposing administratively that we advance our hourly staff with both an opportunity to take a step based on their hire date and to increase the system by the amount that we forecasted in the first stages of the budget. And so that net result would be again for hourly staff 7.48% increase, which was based on how the numbers forecasted we could get closest to 7.5. And so that would be a 6.5% increase to the system and a step movement of just about 1%. The reason we do think it's important to advance our hourly staff is we need to continue to move that group to get them closer to the average of our comparable peers, and this would enable us to make sure that their first paychecks for hours worked starting on July 1st would reflect this new wage and be correct. And I did the costing document is a screen grab that you have seen. This is a portion of the forecasting that we've done so far. So any questions on that?
Brian, if I could add, a couple months ago, we had lined up a schedule that we were hoping to implement for the spring that just didn't quite work out because of the lack of clarity of state budget information. On that original schedule that Brian put together, the intent was also to have administrators and admin support moving forward in June. The reason for that is contracts do renew on July 1st. But given the fact that we just opened up negotiations with teachers and we have not yet prepared an offer, we believe it makes sense to hold any salary discussions off and hold at this time. And so we're a little bit off the schedule that we were hoping to be on because of that lack of state budget information. But we do believe strongly that making an investment in the hourly staff, even though we don't have that state budget clarity, is critical for Brian's efforts to recruit and retain and his team's efforts to properly pay people. The retro pay concept is very, very challenging for hourly folks. But I think it's important to note that ultimately, once we learn the complete picture for the state budget, Brian intends to revisit this group.
I wondered that.
Because we do not want to have this group be in a different situation than where we ultimately may end up being with other groups. So from the perspective of like a standard base increase, we certainly would want to bring back this group. And then secondly, from the perspective of the fact that this group in probably unlike any of the others for the next fiscal year will be not aligned with the average of our peers. We believe teachers will be aligned. We believe administrators will be aligned with our ultimate agreements on wage increases, but this group would be the one that's not. So I know Brian wants to have that conversation, but it's all pending getting that clarity that Brian mentioned in the notes. this certainly is an investment from the board without really knowing the state budget picture. So we do appreciate your consideration of, going out a bit on a limb with saying we do want to invest in this group without truly understanding what that state budget looks like. The advantage that we have maybe over some other districts in our current situation is we know at a minimum, we have the operational referendum funds available to us. So if for some reason the state budget for schools really goes sideways, at least we're in a better position than a lot of other districts because we do have the operational referendum available to us, which is the $3 million mark next year. So the one that we just had approved was 1 million this year, 3 million next year, 6 million the year after. So we do feel good about, making that investment in this group, even though we don't have that complete clarity, because we do have those additional resources. I mean, Brian has brought up before, the hope is that the state budget provides the appropriate inflationary increases for the district, and the operational referendum money could be used to address the issues in our compensation system for our groups. So that's still what Brian is hoping to do, is to have those operational referendum funds available to address some of the issues with compensation for this group and to allow the state budget to fund the cost of living increases. We just don't have enough information now to be able to say we know that's going to work that way. But we do know we have the capacity to fund increases for this group, even though you as board members don't have the state budget picture. And you can be rest assured that we have an ability to fund what Brian is presenting, no matter how the state budget plays itself out, because we do have the operational referendum funds available. We can't say that in total for all groups, because if you look at all of our compensation added up, we definitely need the state budget picture plus the referendum picture to be able to present the total picture to you as board members. But we are confident enough that the proposal that Brian has put together can be funded no matter what strategy, no matter what scenario plays out with the state budget. And we hope to come back to this in the near future once we've been able to see that picture.
So looking at the timeline, when the budget comes in, we've got everything set to go, so we're not taking a long time to get everything okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as we have talked in this group about the idea of having for our largest employee group of teachers, having new paychecks be accurate and reflective of an increase. That would mean we're gonna back up against a kind of a decision-making deadline of some point this summer. That we would need to make a decision for that with those employee groups as well. But within the hourly group, this is a decision-making point for us to make the July 1 hours updated. What we could do, and as Steve mentioned, my goal is with, again, working off a presumption of a favorable state budget for all the incentive that they have to create that. We would revisit this hourly group again to just really take a strong action to get us closer to Dane County average. But we could take that action from that point moving forward. So again, in hourly groups and with a True Time, our electronic pay system, an adjustment really needs to be a forward-facing adjustment to make it operate smoothly. You can go backwards, but it's a lot of complex calculation, and the system doesn't do that. People do that, but we could readdress it, and I would want us to readdress it again moving forward. If to make funds available. So again, clarity wise, my goal would be that right now, this group is a 6.5% system increase. if we take some of the actions that we need to take within these groups to get to closer to average, I would see us being a much larger ultimate percentage than that at a later point. But at this time, this would be what I would propose would be responsible for us to do.
You're all good with this? I would make a motion that we move this forward so that we can have that effective July 1st.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved.
And thank you for considering this group as we move forward with all the.
Historically, what's the latest you've ever seen the state come through with their decision on the budget? September? Okay.
Which is really not good for us.
Yeah,
Our second item again would be an action item, seeking an action item. This continues the conversation that we've had about teachers that were hired within a strategy of limiting their amount of experience or degree. Depend. A point is a point, right? So, but limiting either degree or experience as they came into the system. And so these staff that I've reached out to, we're right now is at 28. If we take a look at where they were placed and what their actual experience and degree placement would have been, the value for those individuals is $141,678 total. Now, the part that, again, I did forecast like 150. I believe that I have captured all of the staff that are in this group. But I have, even this morning, actually had 2 individuals reach out to me and say, you know, please do a more detailed audit of my particular situation and confirm it with me. And so I'm anticipating that I've really kind of come to the end of that, but there's still a few trickling in. And so at this point, I'm still believing that we're going to stay 150 or less, but the actual amount at this time, walking into the meeting today, was 141. And so I think that, you know, we're going to be very close to that. And so the idea behind this is that this would be an addition to the 22-23 contract. So it would be paid out. 26 of them are on the 24 payrolls, which means they get it on June 30th. 2 of them are on 19 pays, and so they would get it on June 15th of this year. This contract.
They're full back.
Yep, and then it would be this added amount to their contract would be the basis for their future contracts. And so this would be again something that would be hoping that you all would advance as a motion for us to make that adjustment moving forward.
So if I was hired this year, I would get full experience from where I came from.
Yes. Yeah, that's been the practice for within our new compensation system. That's been our practice, is to credit it.
Are we unique in the system? Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of different practices in different school districts. You know, and I'm not sure if your question kind of stems from what was in the paper yesterday about Verona.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So, but again, it's been, what I would say is our practice was consistent. And so in that regards, it was permitted. It just created inequitable results for our ultimate employee, right? I mean, we might have 2 people similarly placed, similarly degreed, similarly worked, and having different wages because of the point at which they were hired. And that can create and has created hard feelings. And so this would be an opportunity to fix
I just
that.
wondered if it had been an individual school's policy, how much to award.
No,
teacher coming
no.
in, or is it state mandated? Or?
No, it's a district decision. And so like every school system has its own salary system. That's not the case. I mean, there are some states where there actually are state systems. Wisconsin is not one of those, so we are, it's local control in that regard.
Yeah, it's just a personal question, so.
Brian, was it jointly? Could a teacher come to you as well as you go to the teacher? I mean, it was like a two-way.
Yeah,
So you feel like everybody fully understood that you're doing this and that they have, if they felt unfairly placed, they could have come to you, or what kind of information does the general staff member?
well, I smile a little bit as you ask that question because, as I am being reminded, almost continually, even when we push messages out, I don't know that they are universally reviewed
did.
and received.
Yeah, I get that.
But we have been working closely, in we've been talking about this in public sessions in these meetings. We've also been openly communicating it to the WTA, including involving them in some of the review of the information. At a high level, not an individual per se. And so I do believe that the message is out there, if you would. Yes, I think that's the best way I would describe it. I believe the message is out there.
And so we'll approve this, but if somebody really hadn't been paying attention and all of a sudden they realize this is happening, you would address them.
Yeah,
as
absolutely. Yeah, yes.
A couple of things just to add to that. So the funding mechanism of the 150, let's just say if there's a few more folks that it grows to that, is really the operational referendum question. So we have not utilized the operational referendum question for compensation yet. So this will be the first time. If you remember when we went to the public with saying what the 3 things were that we were going to use those for. The most popular response on our community survey was attract and retain a high quality staff. So that was the top thing. It was also to replace the federal funding that we are going to lose. That's not happening this year or next year, it's the year after. And then the third thing was ultimately to be able to open the additional schools and have operational expenses for them. So this is the first of those things that we are tapping into the operational referendum question for. And it's also important to note that this does not impact negatively the employee raise process. This is different. We're tapping into operational referendum money. This does not affect like the employee raise discussion for someone who's not involved in this, meaning this doesn't affect everyone else's raise. It's a separate funding mechanism. I just think it's important that folks understand that because we're not doing this and then someone else's raise is going to be a little bit smaller. We're taking this out of the operational referendum funds. And again, like I mentioned before, for all employee groups, Brian is hoping that the state budget provides the resources for standard CPI increases. And the operational referendum fund can be used to address any inequities or differences between a group and the Dane County average. This is one of them. Anything to add to that, Brian?
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
In the budget subcommittee, and I forgot to take a note on it, so I apologize for that. You had mentioned the time frame where the new, at the time, contracts would have fallen into where these 28 to 30 employees are affected. There was
When was that
years-
period of time?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 2011 through 2018, 19 is really the vast majority of those individuals. That was it was a post-Act 10 response to a state budget, some state budget challenges, and then it was I think a combination of that, and then there was a consistency of when do you deviate if you're not going to go back and change the past placements. And so I think it was really kind of two things together. And so we did within our new compensation deviate from this past practice. with an acknowledgement, with our WTA, that it was something that we had to revisit. And that we were just gonna be working towards seeking the funding for that. And so eventually we, we just bit the bullet, right, and made a change moving forward, recognizing we had to go backwards, and this is our opportunity to go backwards.
And those would have all been new hires to our district at that time. It wasn't somebody's existing contract that was taken from one status
Correct.
and
Yeah,
brought down.
yeah, that's correct. We don't have, and I can speak about this because it's actually been a topic that we've addressed with individual staff and WTA. There has not ever been a practice where our staff have had a contract at this level 1 year, and the next contract they have for the same amount of work is less. We've never moved staff backwards. We only have moved individuals forward, or in some cases, like staff that are an improvement plan, for example, they stay at the same level, but they don't go backwards.
The situation we're addressing right now was pre-Brian. I mean, that was with regards to just really tight budgets and wanting to try to reward the folks who were here and returning. And then the impact of that was then kind of the negotiations of people coming into their contracts. And then it's created this discrepancy, which we now can see as we move forward and wanting to now correct it.
I really appreciate you doing this. It's needed and it will hopefully give a lot of people satisfaction. I would move to take this to the full board on Monday.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Our last item is the employee handbooks. And we do have this, really, I think Joan and Judy, I know has been to the Dawn. We kind of have this go through the committee because it's becomes de facto policy, right? Many times it links to policy or it's based off of policy, but in addition, this becomes, so that's why the board reviews it at the HR committee level, and then the full board takes action upon it. It's kind of the process that we use. And then there are also times where the board takes action to adjust it throughout the year, and we communicate that to staff. And so this is like I think it's best to consider it a snapshot, because at least in the 4 years that I've been in this role, we've always come back with something during the school year that has necessitated a change in at least one of the handbooks or all. So this is the first step. Now, the part I would also just remind everybody about is that as you were looking at these handbooks, the first part is that the table of contents and the page numbering is not correct, right? When we do these edits, it adjusts everything, right? It pushes it all off kilter. We do go back and we make sure that those align once but we leave it visible to all of what has been changed. As I described kind of, if it's changed language, it's a different color and underlined. If it's removed or moved, it's struck. And so that way it makes it highly evident what has been edited or what has been moved. And so the other part I would, before we kind of get into the three handbooks themselves, is that I think it would be most efficient for us to focus on only those things that are actually changing. Like we absolutely, and this has been a continual process, look to edit or clarify language. And this year, I really worked a lot, and I'm super appreciative of both Amy and Jenny on my team, in that we've done a lot of clarifying and condensing of language in the area of leaves and benefits. And so there's, as you notice, there was a significant amount of editing in those areas. But what I'll point out to you is only those things that are a change from what we've done in the past. And actually many of them, and especially in the benefits area, the board has already taken action on. And this was just getting it into the new handbook, formatted correctly and out for, visible to all staff. Because the benefit changes, although they were put into a place earlier this year, almost all this spring. They actually take effect on July 1st. Within this new handbook, so. But I absolutely will revisit anything you'd like to talk about in the handbooks. But just, I'll focus what I point out as just the changes going forward. And so if we kind of look at, first one, admin and admin support, there are. That is probably the area where it's our smallest handbook. It's also the one in which we had the least adjustments. And so if we talk about what's adjusting in there, all of our benefit actions, so benefits being tied to working 30 or more hours. If any individual in that group is less than 30 hours, they have a legacy connection to what existed prior. And so we continue their benefit level and that's again part-time. That would be a part-time staff, of which we don't have any in administration, but we do have some in admin support. And so there is, again, benefit language, and those benefits now moving forward are really two significant changes. They're tied to working 30 or more hours, and there's an opportunity in health to receive up to 15% employer contribution. So an additional 2% that's available to them. Second change was that within this group, now we no longer are going to offer a cash stipend for them to seek out their own additional term and life insurance. We boosted the coverage for this group to everyone up to the level of $200,000. And then we also added HSA language, which would connect to anyone that would elect to go into the high deductible plan. And then finally, the last change would be that to align this with other groups, if someone were to not use their personal leave, instead of it disappearing or just going away, it rolls into their sick leave bank now. And so that again makes it consistent with both our hourly employee groups and our teacher employees.
And is that also 2 days?
Yes, yeah, well, it depends. Depends on the number of contracts, contracted days, like a 261-day contract gets more personal days than yeah, and then a school year would be 238 gets 3, 260 or 261 gets 4. But typically this is actually, it had never been, this has never crossed my mind to make this adjustment until this year. I had a staff person ask about that, and so I guess I just noticed it at that point, and then thought it would be equitable for us to adjust it. Are there any questions kind of about? So as we kind of flip to the next handbook then, which would be our hourly staff. Again, this would be as I mentioned before, there would be a significant amount of edits and leave language, but no change, no changes in terms of what is offered to individuals. Benefit changes, which make it inclusive of what the board has already taken action on. And then I think just for noting, is we talk about leaves. The general format we're going to follow in all the handbooks now are eligibility or allocation. How do you use it, and what are the restrictions? And that will be, as we've talked about, I think it's really helpful to have all the handbooks have a similar format and have the language align, with the ultimate goal of a someday goal of having maybe a single handbook with some appendices about the individual. I make no promise, because it's going to be a big undertaking, but at some point we'll be able to do that. The more we keep these languages aligned. Let's see. All right. Actual changes in the hourly staff. One change is section 4.0, which is comp time. The previous language used to say that someone could accrue comp time from January 1st to June 30th. and use that by June 30th, or have to be paid out. Or they could accrue it a second time from July 1st to December 31st, with it paid out on December 30th. Comp time is something that an employer can choose to offer. We're required to offer overtime, time and a half beyond 40 hours. You can choose to offer comp time, which is time and a half of leave or extra hour. We choose to do so. But we're going to restrict that a little bit because the language didn't work. We found that actually came up this year. If an individual accrued comp time, or had accrued comp time and didn't use it by December 31st, for example, we couldn't pay him on December 30th. So because it was still open.
Yeah.
So what we're just saying now is that you can accrue it between basically cut short 2 weeks of accrual. And so if somebody were to get more than 40 hours between December 15th and December 30th, we would pay them overtime to be legal, but we wouldn't let them build those hours up for comp time. Because we need to have them empty that bank and pay them out or use it. And so that's the reason for the shortening. It doesn't change the fact that it's still time and a half. It just changes the fact that you can't get, for those 2 weeks, additional leave. And then as we go to section 9.0, this again would be an increase that would keep us in alignment with our teaching staff. We added $5 to the value of a sick day upon retirement. So again, the values between an hourly staff person and a teaching group are different, but the increase is consistent between the two. And so that would go to 130 for that. And then the final, excuse me, the next change, not the final change, is section 14. This is a combination of things that we have been doing, and so we're trying to make it highly visible to staff, and so that is, we have had a number of staff that have chosen to accept additional hours to run school vans. And so for hourly staff, we've designated that rate at $20 per hour. We're putting it in the handbook so it's more visible. And then we also have had staff that have voluntarily accepted to work with students of special needs while they're at a co-curricular. And so we assigned the value of $20 per hour for that activity as well. And so the way this has worked this year is a variety of staff have said, yeah, I'm willing and interested in doing so. And so we've added these hours have become additional hours to their regular role. And this just makes it evident what those are, makes it kind of advertise it, if you would. This next section 14 circles back to discussions that we had earlier this school year, where we were engaged in talking about how would we want to perhaps incentivize or treat an employee of ours that went and got their bus driver's license or had it available and then started to drive for our bus service, which is Lamers. And so what we have here is two things. One is the practice that we're following, where we have current hourly employees that if they are driving when they're regularly scheduled to be working for us, as long as their supervisor approves it, we let them be logged in for us, so they're not shorting hours that they normally work for us. But we're also saying it's fine for them to seek out and have the bus company pay them as well. So they, again, the work that they need to do waits for them. So this gives them a little bit of, hopefully incentive to take on that duty. And then the other part would be brand new, which is an incentive to have staff go out and become drivers, which is that if they will earn their CDL and become a driver for our service, after 90 days, we'll give them a bonus of 500. That number probably seems familiar because we offer it now as a referral bonus. If they find another hour, if any of our staff find an hourly employee, and that after 90 days, we give them $500. So in this way, we're kind of rewarding someone for finding their own bus driver for us.
This isn't considered double dipping.
Uh,
Paid for one and paid for the other at the same time.
Well, I would say that the term double dipping, I would have would kind of refer to like, kind of the past practice of. Someone could be receiving their retirement benefits and being actively employed full-time. Which that's not permitted anymore now. You're limited in hours in state retirement system. You can work, but you can only work so much or for so long. In a way, this does allow somebody to be being paid for two things at once. For example, if a custodian who normally works 6 to 2:30 for us, drove morning bus. We would still allow them to be punched in for their normal custodian duty. But they could also be simultaneously driving the bus. Which recognizes that they're not actively doing the custodian duty at that moment, but we're kind of in that spot, Judy, where we're trying to
You
find
need to-
ways to get as many bus drivers as we
So
can.
you're looking at, with the permission of their supervisor, please do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's very clear that supervisors have to approve it, because, for example, this would not work for a paraeducator who's with kids, right? To suddenly say, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna drive bus, because now who's gonna support that child, right? But it might, they could still maybe do it after their day's over, right? Or someone else might be able to work around it.
This is for temporary situations. We want to have our custodians and hourly folks here when they're supposed to be working. We want our bus drivers to be fully staffed. But there were times this year, we didn't have enough bus drivers to do the routes. And we wanted to incentivize people who already had this license or were willing to get it to be able to supplement that, so we could keep our daily schedules moving and also incentivize them that there was some additional benefit for them.
So we
helping.
still have control, but
Right,
we're incentivized.
right.
Yeah.
We're not looking for someone to drive bus full time and then it's someone that it's on those.
Thank you. That's an important distinction, and that's why I really involved in the supervisor, right? Because the supervisor would understandably not be supportive of, hey, I'm gonna lose this person every day of the week. And so, but in one-off circumstances where there's 24 drivers available and then we have 25 routes, which is I think that's the correct number. That has happened this year. I'm not exactly sure in the 24.
So that's when they call you guys in to drive bus, right?
Well, I noticed Brian didn't put that on.
Well, I could connect it. I could connect it. If it's in a handbook, I could connect it. And so it could be available, I guess, if we wanted to extend it out to folks.
Yeah, okay, good.
So if we go back to more normal time, we'd probably remove this.
For sure.
from the handbook.
Yeah, which would kind of speak to what I mentioned, remind us before, like we go back and edit
Change,
handbooks
yeah.
as we need to. I apologize, this next section was originally connected and all in 14, but now we split to 15. So 15 is also brand new. And this is a proposal that I would have moving forward, which would really align us with our county peers. This is something that was a topic of discussion in our HR group. Most of our comparable districts reimburse employees for getting their special ed paraeducator license. Almost all of them do. We were one of the few that didn't. And this was something that I had a staff people ask me about. I think we don't do this for other employee groups. We don't do this for teachers, administrators, student admin support. But this is unique in that this is the only hourly role that we have that requires a state license. And so I think again, it recognizes that unique spot for an hourly employee to have to get a license to work for us. Let's help them for this. And again, it would be kind of naturally spread. I didn't do a cost per year basis of it, but it would be kind of naturally spread out just based on our hiring patterns. If someone comes to us new, they need to get that license in the first year. It's good for 5 years. And so this would be kind of looking forward for our employees, if they're current employees, if whatever renewals came up after this, they could show us that they paid, which is simple for them to do. Or if they're brand new to us, should show us that they've submitted, which they have to do to get for us to officially hire them. And then once we got to the period of, 90 days, we'd reimburse them for brand new.
Our
employees.
special education pairs paid more than regular.
They are, they are our current highest paid para educators, but it's still, if you were to compare it to like a teacher for, right, it's still a bigger chunk of their actual income. It would be. Yeah, it would be, we're asking, basically, like I said, we're asking them to pay to work for us, which many do, in fact, have been doing, right? And that actually, not just us, but our top districts, this is really kind of one of the incentives that people have started to put in to try to make the job more attractive. And just trying to keep us comfortable in that area.
So Brian, I noticed the second part mentions will occur on a regularly scheduled pay period. Do you know, are other districts doing this through like payroll, which then they'd be taxed on, or accounts payable as a reimbursement, which they wouldn't?
Oh,
I'm just curious if that's come up or not, as to how they're choosing to do it.
I did not, I don't know that information. I could certainly find that out before, Monday and look to adjust that. That I just, that was my first intuition of where to put it, but I think it would be certainly possible for us to adjust that.
If it is on a regular pay period, can be grossed up for taxes, would we not want to do that because it just charges the district more of our taxes?
It would be, yeah, it'd be both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is there's probably districts who set this up as a reimbursement, because the person writes the check out of their checkbook and they submit the evidence of the check, and then it would go through accounts payable, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
I'm just phrasing that as a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I can double check on that and connect with Ally, to what would be best moving forward. All right, so then if we go to the appendices, first one is B. And again, technically A is the FMLA notice, that's why B starts here. The reason we deleted, these two are deleted, is actually we don't have those positions anymore. We don't have those administrative positions. So like, we don't have an assistant director of instruction or it's assistant director of student services. So we have roles, but now they are, they're included in the list, and so their admin assistants have a different title. And then if we go to the second one, which is the appendix C, sorry. This is our custodial maintenance. There's two, I think, important things in here. The first is we have 4 lanes: custodian, courier, head custodian, maintenance, and electrician. The administrative proposal here would be that we would move the high school head custodian to the maintenance lane, in recognition of really 2 things. One, they have the largest crew of custodians to supervise, almost twice the size of actually twice the size when fully staffed of any other building. And secondly, that they are our most heavily used building. And so it is an increased level of complexity. And so in conversations that I've had with John regarding this, he's supportive of the idea of just recognizing that while head custodians do have additional responsibilities, which is why they have their own lane, high school head custodians are even more on top of that. And so that would be one proposed change. And then the second proposed change is in the trade lane, lane 4. This is actually taking us back to somewhere where we were historically, where we had prior to this identified an electrician and a plumber as on staff tradespeople. These are both, they would carry the necessary license or that would be associated with it. We moved away from plumber as we, at that time, again, Steve and Randy can correct me, felt like it was better to outsource that work to outside firms. But now we're really back, we're in a position where we have we have a member of our maintenance team who is a licensed plumber, who the vast majority of his work, 80+% of his work, is plumbing work. And so we are using him as a plumber. which this makes it more closely aligned to what is out in kind of the trades world. And it recognizes the work that they're doing, which is trades work.
Is he over in custodian right now?
No, he'd be in maintenance,
So
so
he's in maintenance
yeah.
right now.
he'd be in lane 3, so he would
That
slide.
would be nice.
Yeah, I think it is something, I believe that it does recognize the work that is being done and
Yeah.
makes it accurate and then again, they are licensed, they go through that process to earn those things. Apprentice programs, et cetera. And then, and I think, and then our last appendices, G, is just, this is just the legacy, we added some legacy language. Because some staff now are going to be legacy into benefit eligibility. Any questions? So then we go to our final handbook, which is the teacher guidelines. Again, I bounce back and forth between guidelines handbook, right? The common term handbook, they're really employee guidelines officially, but so if things that we have spoken about through in there, the benefits changes, the formatting things that we've talked about, eligibility things that we've talked about. If we go to part 6, VI article J, it's really our first change, which is that we also have adjusted, the board already adjusted term life insurance for this group to now be a flat amount of $85,000 for our teachers. As opposed to being connected to their salary. Which again, the board had taken action on earlier this spring. And if we go to Article M, I'm sorry, Rebecca, I should have put pages on these. That would be benefits. It's probably like you're getting really close here. Actually, you should be in the right section. You gotta go back to sleep. Yeah, sorry. But Article M, so this would be an increase in the retirement contributions. We're following a plan of action that we started several years ago within the handbook review committee to gradually increase the district contribution towards retirement, the HRA or and so this year, again, following that would be an addition of $20, an additional $20 of increase, which would get us to, I think the numbers are now up to 640. Yeah, I can get I'm sorry, I can look at it here and probably find the page. Well, does anyone care what page it's on? Okay, all right, sorry.
But we
All right,
care
so
about these handbooks.
All right, we do care, but we just don't, I understand. We only care about the change, right? So increase of $20 additional contribution, and that's for both pre-2008 hires and post 2008 hires in the annual contribution amount. And then for both of those two higher dates, our higher groups as well, we increased the value of a sick day by $5. And then if we go to part 9, which is the compensation part, that what happened here is really we had some compensation language that was living in points, kind of professional development section, part 10. It was really compensation language, and so I again just shifted where it was located. This kind of supports some of the feedback I've gotten from teaching staff that they really like to have it be as abundantly clear as possible. How does our compensation system work? And so by, I think, putting the language all together, I think it allows them to see that even more clearly. And then it also, as we, one addition is prior to this, the base salary was only noted in the start of the co-curricular schedule. Now I'm just putting a placeholder for it in there. As soon as we get it established, we'll drop it in. It's, not, the new one is not established for this coming year. So we'll put that in there. Article C, we talked is summer school rates. Those the board took action on in January. And so that just makes it evident where, what it is at now. We do that and then so that we can advertise that new rate for staff. And then the board had also taken action that we'll tie it to an increase. We'll tie that to increases moving forward, so I won't have to point that out to you as in moving in future years. And then as we talk about Article H, which is proctoring and subbing duties, we added $5 to the value of each of those per hour. And then Article I is in a new section. It should be, I think, a little bit before that. There it is. It's in okay, there, special education parity. So this is actually connected to what I mentioned, the hourly group. We've had teachers also choose to assist with driving students and helping or supporting students at co-curriculars. And so for teachers, we connected that rate to some of the other duties that they have in the handbook. And so transporting, it'd be $30 per hour for a teacher. They're paid hourly for that work. And then again, if they support a student at co-curricular activities, that'd be $30 per hour for that as well. And then as we look to part 11, which is the co-curricular schedule, there was additions of positions the board has approved in the co-curricular process. One other position that we added under Special Olympics was agency manager. That's a required position to be participating in Special Olympics. We've never had that in there because Chris Hetzel has filled that role for, I don't know how long, a really long time. And she continues to want to do it as a volunteer. But Chris might not want to do it forever. And so at some point, when we have the next person that we need to have in that role, this identifies kind of where it, what it is valued at, where it sits. The reason FCLA was moved in the high school co-curriculars is that is a CTE, which is a career and technical organization tied to a course. Like FFA is tied to agriculture, Skills USA is tied to tech ed, HOSA is tied to health occupations. All of those clubs are our most active student non-athletic co-curriculars. Students go to leadership, students go to competition, students are doing community service. And so that club wasn't originally moved because it wasn't active. But now that it has resumed activity, we want to treat it as we treat all those others. And so that's why it slid in with DECA, FBLA, FFA, HOSA, et cetera. And then in the middle school co-curriculars, the middle school head track and cross-country coaches, we did adjust those percentages to be on par with the other head coaches. So that, again, the responsibilities are very similar. And so we should pay them similarly. And so we aligned those head coaching jobs. Any questions about our teachers? All right. So this would again be seeking an action item if you, and so if you would support it, advance it to the full board for their consideration on Monday.
So I will make a motion to advance all the handbooks to the full board for next Monday.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Passed.
Thanks for all your work on those. That
Wow.
cannot be a fun job and I mean, but you go through it so carefully and you find all those little discrepancies and.
Well, there's a lot, and I cannot and would not take credit for all of it. I mean, there's employee groups that work with me, there's employees that give feedback. And within my own team, like I mentioned, Amy and Jenny spend a significant amount of time making this what you saw. And so like suggestions that they have. So I certainly appreciate that this is a group effort for sure.
Something that isn't on the agenda, but if I could just ask a question about our new health insurance. Everybody has been enrolled. Do you have any idea the percentage of people who took the high deductible? Was that similar to what you thought it would be when you kind of?
That's a great, I don't have a final answer. I can give you like a near finished answer. We had about 10% choose to go into that. I don't know where it landed.
Yeah.
I can have that answer for you for sure. I can actually go get it from Jenny.
It's okay, I just
But I
was
can have it one day.
curious that, as you projected the cost of that, where we all kind of ended up.
Well, I mean, we did
And
design.
and I
yeah.
understand that, we kind of felt.
Yeah, and I think I think that was, we weren't sure. I think that how it landed. I mean, it was designed so that it could be whichever direction the staff person went, the district contribution was the same. I think it shows that there, for many, they saw a benefit in it. I mean, I kind of feel like, Todd Shuka, and I were talking about it, and he felt like he maybe talked to every one of those people as well as a member of the insurance committee. I think I might have talked to almost all of them also. In that, staff were doing their real due diligence and asking a lot of really good questions about it. And I think that the nice thing about a group like that is that it will then be an opportunity for other staff to ask them what their experience was like, because it's going to be different. I think it could be set up to be a real advantage to those staff. But they will have a different insurance experience than someone in a traditional plan will. And so this will be really informative for other staff to learn what was it like, and it'll be helpful for us in the insurance committee to hear from them. What is it like? What do we need to make sure we do a better job with educating, so that, or highlighting, what is it like going forward? I think it will remain a really viable, healthy option for staff, moving forward. And now we've dipped our toe into the water, and we'll see what it's gonna be like.
I appreciate that 10% gives in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of it's a little bit of a cross section. I couldn't give you a breakout of, is it a true 10% in every employee group? But I will say that I know that it involves every employee group. From admin to hourly, some folks chose to try it, so.
Okay. We don't set up another meeting.
I don't think so, but I think just as a placeholder, I'm working with my team to kind of identify what might be have to make a decision by date, for us to advance the salaried individuals. And so that's likely going to be sometime in July, that we would need to. And I think the other part I recognize is that, front page of the State Journal, Madison did resolve, or did, their contract with teachers. And so I think that, we've got to recognize that will increase the desire of our teachers to do the same. And so, we've got to, and I'll keep a line of communication open with the WTA about that. But knowing that if we want checks to be accurate, and they're going to want to know that as soon as we can, we'll be likely having to reconvene in July for negotiations. At the latest. At the latest, right? So just again, for the hundreds of thousands of people that listen to this, not saying we are for sure waiting till then. I'm saying we will be back together by then, so.
So open. Anybody want to adjourn?
Sure, motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.